The night is drawing in, and the world outside your window is quieting down. Tonight, we're venturing into a place you know well, Walmart. But after tonight, you might not see it the same way again. These are real stories, sent in by people who found themselves in situations they couldn't explain, in a place they thought they knew. Prepare yourself for 3 true, terrifying Walmart horror stories. Let's begin. Kevin wasn't particularly thrilled about working the night shift. It wasn't his first choice, not by a long shot. He'd much rather be home, asleep, dreaming of anything other than endless aisles and misplaced merchandise. But bills needed to be paid, and the overnight stocking job at Walmart was what he could get. So, he found himself pushing a heavy cart through the eerily quiet store, the fluorescent lights humming above him like a swarm of tired bees. The job was usually quiet, almost peaceful in its monotony. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerators, the occasional clatter of a dropped box, and the distant rumble of the street sweeper outside. He'd gotten used to the solitude, even started to appreciate it. It was a chance to be alone with his thoughts, to lose himself in the repetitive task of stocking shelves. But one night, everything changed. Around 2 a.m., a prickling sensation crawled up his spine. He felt eyes on him in the canned goods aisle, a sense of being watched that was far from the usual solitude. He tried to shake it off, attributing it to fatigue or an overactive imagination. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing minute. Finally, unable to ignore it any longer, he glanced up. At the end of the aisle, partially obscured by the shadows, stood a tall, gaunt man in a dark hoodie. The hood was pulled up, casting his face in deep shadow, making it impossible to discern any features. His face was hidden in shadow, completely unreadable. He just stood there, motionless, silent, watching Kevin with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. It wasn't a casual glance, it was a focused, unwavering stare that felt predatory. Kevin couldn't shake the feeling that he was being sized up, assessed, like prey in the crosshairs. A wave of unease washed over him. He tried to ignore him, to convince himself that it was just another customer browsing late at night. But the man's presence was too unsettling, too deliberate. He decided to move to another aisle, hoping to put some distance between himself and the unsettling figure. He grabbed his cart, its wheels squeaking loudly in the silence, and hurried away. But the feeling of being watched only grew, intensifying with every step he took. He could feel the man's eyes boring into the back of his head, tracking his every movement. The hairs on his neck stood on end, and a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. He tried to focus on his work, on the task at hand, but the man's presence was a constant distraction, a dark cloud hanging over him. He couldn't resist the urge to look back. When Kevin peeked back down the aisle, the man was gone, vanished without a trace. A wave of relief washed over him. Maybe he had imagined it all. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a figment of his sleep-deprived imagination. Relieved, he returned to work, trying to put the unsettling encounter behind him. He started stocking the cereal aisle, the colorful boxes a welcome distraction from the darkness. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw him again. The same man, now at the end of the cereal aisle, closer than before. Fear spiked, cold and sharp. There was no way the man could have moved there so quickly without being seen. The cereal aisle was long and straight, offering a clear line of sight. Kevin would have noticed if he had walked down it. It was as if he had teleported, appearing out of thin air. Panic seized him. He abandoned his cart, the boxes of cereal tumbling to the floor, and hurried to the front of the store, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed to get away from this man, to find someone who could help him. He rushed to the customer service desk, where the night manager, Dave, was sitting, looking bored. Kevin, breathless and agitated, told his manager, Dave, about the strange man, about his unsettling presence and impossible movements. Dave listened with a weary expression, then brushed it off as just another late-night weirdo. Someone probably harmless and just a little bit off. Kevin lingered up front, hoping to see the man leave, to confirm that he was just a harmless weirdo. But he never saw the man leave. He scanned the parking lot, the entrance, every corner of the store he could see, but the man was nowhere to be found. Eventually, feeling foolish and dismissed, he forced himself back to work. The image of the hooded figure burned into his mind. The store was eerily quiet, even more so than before. Every shadow seemed to deepen, every sound amplified. Kevin finished the cereal aisle, his hands shaking slightly, and moved to the coffee aisle, narrow, claustrophobic, and lined with towering shelves of caffeinated promises. He tried to focus on stocking the shelves, on the familiar routine, but his senses were on high alert. Suddenly, he heard a soft scraping behind him, a subtle sound that sent a jolt of adrenaline through his veins. He turned slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. The man was there, shuffling closer, his face still hidden in the shadows of his hood. He was closer than before, much closer, and the scraping sound seemed to be coming from his feet, as if he were dragging something along the floor. Trapped in the narrow aisle with shelves looming on either side, Kevin froze, paralyzed by fear. The man raised a hand, his movements slow and deliberate, and pointed directly at him. The gesture was menacing, accusatory, filled with an unspoken threat. Instinct took over, overriding reason and logic. Kevin screamed, a primal scream of terror that echoed through the silent store. He shoved his cart at the man, sending it crashing into him with a loud clang, and sprinted for the break room, his legs pumping as fast as they could. He didn't look back, didn't dare to see if the man was following him. He reached the break room door, fumbled with the handle, and slammed the door behind him, locking it with trembling hands. He huddled in the break room, his breath coming in ragged gasps, until his co-workers arrived, alerted by his screams. Together, they searched the store, combing through every aisle, every corner, every hiding place. But the man had vanished, disappearing as mysteriously as he had appeared. Kevin quit the next day, handing in his resignation to a bewildered Dave. He never returned to Walmart after dark, haunted by the memory of the tall, gaunt man in the dark hoodie, the man who had stalked him through the silent aisles of the night. The experience left him with a deep-seated fear of the dark, and a lingering sense of unease that he could never quite shake. Maria, a cashier at the local Walmart, considered herself a seasoned veteran of the retail world. She'd seen it all, or so she thought. From unruly customers to bizarre product returns, nothing seemed to faze her anymore. She approached each shift with a sense of calm, ready to tackle whatever the day might throw her way. Little did she know, one seemingly ordinary afternoon would shatter her perception of reality. It was a particularly slow afternoon, the kind where the minutes stretched into an eternity. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the near-empty aisles. Just as Maria was about to succumb to boredom, an elderly woman, seemingly out of another era, approached her register. Her clothes were old-fashioned, her demeanor gentle, and her presence immediately piqued Maria's curiosity. The woman carefully placed a carton of milk on the conveyor belt. It was a simple, unassuming carton, the kind you'd find in any grocery store. But something about the way she handled it, with such delicate care, made it seem almost precious. Next came a loaf of bread, its crust golden brown and slightly misshapen, as if it were homemade. The aroma, faint but noticeable, hinted at warmth and comfort, a stark contrast to the cold, impersonal atmosphere of the store. And finally, a single, perfect red apple. It gleamed under the fluorescent lights, its skin flawless and vibrant. It was the kind of apple that seemed to have been plucked straight from a fairy tale, an object of simple beauty amidst the mundane. As the woman arranged her meager purchases, she offered Maria a faint smile. But despite the gesture of kindness, her eyes held a profound sadness, a deep well of sorrow that seemed to penetrate Maria's very soul. It was a look that spoke of loss, of longing, of a burden carried for far too long. Maria, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling, began to ring up the items, the scanner emitting its familiar beeps as she processed each one. She focused on the task at hand, attempting to ignore the woman's piercing gaze and the heavy silence that had settled over the checkout lane. "That'll be $6.45, ma'am," Maria announced, her voice barely above a whisper. She braced herself for the woman to reach into her purse, expecting the transaction to proceed like any other. But the woman didn't move. She just stared at Maria, her eyes locked on hers with an unnerving intensity. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the hum of the refrigerators in the distance. Then, in a voice barely audible, she whispered, "He's waiting. I must go now." The words hung in the air, cryptic and unsettling, leaving Maria completely bewildered. Without another word, the woman turned and walked away, not toward the exit as one would expect, but down the main aisle, disappearing into the labyrinthine depths of the store. She vanished into the paper towel section, a place where countless rolls of absorbent paper stood stacked floor to ceiling. Perplexed and disturbed, Maria reported the incident to her supervisor, who, equally puzzled, decided to review the security footage. They hoped to find an explanation for the woman's strange behavior and her abrupt departure. What the security footage revealed was even more unsettling. The woman had indeed turned into the paper towel aisle, an aisle that was a dead end with no other exits or pathways. And according to the cameras, she never came out. No doors, no exits, no trace of her whatsoever. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist. She simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a lingering sense of unease and a mystery that defied all logical explanation. The story of the disappearing customer quickly became store folklore, whispered among employees during late-night shifts and fueling countless rumors and speculations. But for Maria, it was more than just a spooky tale. It was a chilling memory, etched into her mind, a constant reminder of the day reality seemed to bend and break, a mystery she knew she could never truly shake. The image of the woman's sad eyes and her cryptic words would forever haunt her, a testament to the unsettling secrets that lie hidden beneath the surface of the ordinary. It was a typical Friday night for Chloe and her friend Jessica. They decided to hit up the local Walmart for some late-night shopping, browsing through the aisles, giggling, and just enjoying the freedom of youth. The store was buzzing with activity, even at that late hour. People were stocking up for the weekend, kids were running around, and the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Little did they know, their mundane shopping trip was about to take a terrifying turn. As they continued their shopping, Chloe suddenly felt the need to use the restroom. "Hey, Jess, I'll be right back," she said, heading towards the dimly lit hallway that led to the public restrooms. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting long, eerie shadows down the corridor. The restroom sign seemed to beckon her closer, promising relief but unknowingly leading her into a chilling encounter. It was empty, or so she thought. As she stepped inside, the silence was almost deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the ventilation system. But that silence wouldn't last for long. Chloe quickly entered a stall, seeking privacy. But then, a sound pierced the silence, a faint, unsettling melody. From the next stall, she heard a little girl's slow, haunting humming. It was a simple tune, yet it sent shivers down her spine. The humming was off-key, almost mournful, and it seemed to echo through the empty restroom, amplifying the sense of unease. Chloe tried to ignore the unsettling sound, hoping it would stop. She finished quickly, eager to leave the eerie restroom. As she cautiously made her way towards the exit, she couldn't resist a quick glance at the stall next to hers. What she saw made her blood run cold. Underneath the stall door, she saw a woman's feet in old black heels, hovering an inch off the floor, twisted unnaturally. The shoes looked ancient, like something out of a vintage movie, and the way they were positioned defied gravity. The humming stopped abruptly, as if the entity within the stall had sensed her presence. Chloe didn't wait to investigate further. She bolted, terrified, her heart pounding in her chest. She burst out of the restroom and frantically searched for Jessica, her voice trembling as she recounted what she'd seen. "You won't believe what just happened," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. Jessica, initially skeptical, couldn't dismiss the genuine terror in Chloe's voice. Needing proof, or perhaps just seeking to reassure themselves that it was all a figment of Chloe's imagination, they decided to return together. They cautiously approached the restroom door, their footsteps echoing in the silent hallway. As they stood outside, they heard the humming again, faint but unmistakable. Suddenly, the humming escalated into a cacophony of noise, then violent banging erupted from inside the restroom. The stall door shook violently, as if something was trying to break free. A panicked woman ran out, screaming hysterically, her eyes filled with terror. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the noise ceased, and an eerie silence descended upon the restroom once more. Confused and disturbed, Chloe and Jessica decided to alert someone. They found a janitor nearby and explained what had happened. The janitor, a middle-aged man with a weary expression, grabbed his cleaning cart and cautiously entered the restroom. He checked every stall, one by one, but to their disbelief, every stall was empty. There was no sign of the humming girl, the hovering heels, or the panicked woman. Shaken to their core, Chloe and Jessica abandoned their shopping cart, leaving behind the mundane items they had intended to purchase. They never spoke of the incident again, trying to bury the terrifying memory deep within their minds. But for Chloe, the experience left an indelible mark. To this day, she still hears that haunting humming in her nightmares, a chilling reminder of the night they encountered something truly inexplicable in the haunted restroom. Walmart's bright lights are meant to keep darkness at bay, but sometimes the shadows find a way in. Even the most familiar places can hide terrifying secrets. So next time you're in those aisles, pay attention. You never know who or what might be shopping beside you. Thank you for joining me tonight. If you've had a chilling retail experience, share it below. Stay safe and always be aware of your surroundings.